Okay, I believe we are live. So, welcome to the ESA FISTF Player Show. It gives me great pleasure to welcome three very special guests this evening for this show. We have Horst Deimel. So, Horst is one of the top-ranked players in the world, or has been in the past. Veteran player nowadays, but Austrian international player who's played the game since the 82, I think 1982. So a very long time in the game, but he'll share more of his stories later. We have Justin Scott, who Justin is the team manager for Wolverhampton, and I'm sure many of you will have seen the Wolverhampton team progress in recent times with their sponsorship with the football club and the association with the football club, plus also some great events as well. So some really interesting events, and last but not least, that's for sure, Chris Short. Chris is an English champion. He's also played for many years for Wolverhampton Subbuteo Club. So he's part of their famous squad of players, and he's also represented England on numerous occasions as well. So a big warm welcome to our three guests this evening. So good evening, everyone. Buenas noches, buonasera, bonsoir, guten Abend, noswath da, goenand. So some of those translations were awful as per normal, but at least I tried. Okay. So what we're going to do, as per normal, we're going to talk about the game and the history that our guests have had with the game. So we're going to go through lists of questions. We'll also welcome any questions from people that are watching live. So that'll be obviously good. We've already had some questions coming in. So that's good for the show. But to start off with, just like to talk about the first most important question. And this is to start off with Chris. So Chris, how did you first get into Subbuteo, and how old were you?
I was 15, 16 years of age. My next door neighbour knew a player which you may recognise the name of, Anthony Beddoes, and that got me involved with the local Subbuteo club back then, which was organised by Roy Holden. So yeah, 15 years of age, got involved locally. My first big tournament that I played in would have been the World Cup in Silkeborg in Denmark in 1996.
1996, wow. Anthony Beddoes, very interesting story about Anthony Beddoes. About a year and a half ago, I went to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus West Ham. I was on the train, and as I got off the train, this bloke shouted out, "Finchy!" And I turned round, and it was Anthony Beddoes. And he said, "God, I still recognise you from the past. How are you doing?" And I said, "Great." But I hadn't seen him for about, it must be about 25 years. But I was just on my way to the football. He was coming home from work off the train, but lovely lad. And he was certainly a player that used to, partake in quite a few events, didn't he, in the early days?
Yeah, he was back in the day. He was probably a really good player in that era. I think it was the era when Shorab, I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname, was playing as well. So
yeah, brilliant. No, I wouldn't try that either. So same question to Horst. How did you first get into Subbuteo, and how old were you?
First of all, good evening to everybody who is listening live on the show. I think this is a fantastic podcast from Justin. I give him the suggestion to call it the Big Bang Theory for table football for the future. So that could be something on a big fun. I also welcome Chris Short and Justin Scott for this evening. And thank you for the invitation, Justin. Now, my story for table football, or also known as Subbuteo, as we all started with that game, started in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And our family, we raised up in South Africa. My dad was on construction work. And during the school in Randburg and in Risidale, I had English friends, and these guys all played Subbuteo. And my best buddy from Liverpool, his name is David. We still have got contact today. He received in December 1975 a big box, a continental box of Subbuteo. And we started a league with 5 players. And one was a Wolverhampton fan, one was an Arsenal fan, one Manchester United, one was a Liverpool fan, and I was the only non-English guy, and I had to pick a team. So at that time in 1976, Sunderland practically became second division champions, and I chose Sunderland. So I wanted something different from all the other guys. And from that day on, I'm a Sunderland fan. And I was 14 years of age. And I still got my first team. I still got it in my collection. And yeah, that was actually the start in Joburg. And that's why I've got a very special connection to the table football players in South Africa, especially Clinton Gayweiler from Cape Town. And if I can do anything for the South African guys, then I would love to support them to come to a World Cup in the future. That would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you, Horst. That was great. So, last, again, not least, Justin. So, how did you, how old were you when you first got into the game, and how did you first get into it?
Good evening, everybody, as well. It's great to come on this. So, thank you, Justin, for the invite, of course. Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, my brother, I've got an older brother, 5 years older than me, and he had Subbuteo. I was probably age 5 or 6, and I loved the colours of the teams and, the feel of the players and that sort of thing at that age, but never really played until probably about 1985 when I started to play and had a couple of mates just coming around the house into the garage. And we got the table set up. We started a bit of a league and played. And I used to win all the while, most of the games. And so I got to a point where I decided that I wanted to try something a bit more and try going to the club. So so I actually went to Black Country Subbuteo Club, which was run by Roy Holden, who Christian has already mentioned, and went and played there. And my first, it was interesting because my first game, I walked in, Roy was brilliant, and I'll mention Roy more as we go on anyway. But Roy said, come and have a game. And he said, I'll play you against my weakest player, and we'll see how you get on. And I think I won sort of 7 or 8-0. So he said, play your next game. He says, well, we'll play somebody a bit better. So I did that, and I think I beat them 7 or 8-0. And then I played my third game, and they were like, oh, this is one of my best players. He's really good. And I beat them 3 or 4-0. And Roy was going, oh, my God, And so it was fantastic from that point of view. But they had got some great players at that club. Roy being one of them, Richard Kane, Don Kane, Richard Badger, Anthony Beddoes. Now, funnily enough, Anthony Beddoes, I actually taught Anthony to play in my garage at my mum and dad's house. So it's really interesting to hear that Anthony and Christian obviously went on to play together as well. So, I mean, I remember switching on the TV in 1990 and there was some Subbuteo on TV, and I was like, what? Subbuteo's never on TV. So it was fantastic that the next match that came up was Anthony Beddoes of all people. So amazing to see that, and obviously to have a hand in the creation of Anthony at that time. And we have tried in vain to get him back playing with us. So if he's out there and anybody knows him and is listening now, by all means, send him to the club. Tell him to get in touch with me, because we'd love to get him back on the scene.
Yeah, that would be cool. All right, great answers, guys. So thank you very much. We might have to call this the Anthony Beddoes show in a minute. The way things are going. So next question, I'm going to now go back to Horst. This next question. So when you were growing up, Horst, you were surrounded by many players that are now legends of the game today. But who was the one player you looked up to when you were sort of striving to be a champion yourself? Who would that be?
When I started in 1976, I took all my stuff to Austria when I had to go to school in 1979. So between 76 and 79, I was in South Africa playing there. And I took my stuff with me. In 1982, I contacted the Austrian Association and we founded a club, TFC Ebenfurt. And at that time, the first year I didn't have any international contacts, but in 1983, I had my first international match at the 10 years anniversary tournament in Vienna. And I played my first international match against Germany in the B team. And that gave me a lot of power to win 2 times in a row the regional championship of Lower Austria. And I practically was promoted to the Austrian first division. And in 1984, it was in October 1984, I played the first time at the ETF Europa Cup in Verviers, Belgium. And I was drawn against Willy Hoffmann in the first group. So I had to play Willy Hoffmann in my first ever Europa Cup match. Now you can imagine a guy playing 2 years table football. I had a very strong direction upwards from a starting player to the first division and qualifying practically for the Europa Cup. And I played Willy, and from that moment on, I said, I have to play exactly like Willy. And from that moment on, Willy was my big player, where I said, I have to reach that level. And in 1988, I played Willy Hoffmann in the Europa Cup final in Salzburg, Austria. And I didn't give up. I lost against Willy 4-1 in the final, like many other players did lose against Willy at the Europa Cup final, so like Martin Bomm or Gerhard Ecker or Marc Clairbois. And that's actually Willy. And from the Austrian point of view, Gerhard Ecker was the most important player for me. He was a very, very good friend. We still have got contact, partially 1 or 2 times a year. And he played fantastic table football. And I wish that we have players like Gerhard Ecker in the future again, who can play with figures swirling around the corners and playing sensational moves and not only straightforward. That's my big dream. Yeah. Okay, that's it then from my side, Justin. Thank you.
Excellent. And the interesting thing there, you said that you played Germany in 1982, Austria-Germany. Is that right?
That was 1983. Yes, that was my first international. Yes.
I was going to say, because in 1982, I seem to recall a very famous football match between Austria and West Germany it looked like a fixed 0-0 draw. Do you remember this?
That was in that was in Spain, 1982 at the World Cup, and because Germany lost against Algeria 2-1, but the Austrians were beating Algeria 2-1. And we also beat Chile, but we had to. No, I think we lost against Germany 1-0. I think we lost. And if we're going to lose, Austria will qualify, and the Germans would proceed to the next round as well. So that was actually a bullshit. We should have beaten the Germans. That would have been better.
Right. Yeah. History there, but
exactly.
So, Chris, when you were growing up, who was the sort of player that you sort of looked up to? With one player that you looked up to when you were sort of starting out?
Well, I mean, I have a massive amount of respect for Roy Holden, because he got me into the game by probably doing exactly what he did with Justin, playing me against the weakest player within the club. So he got me on the road to becoming a better player. Mike Parnaby made my game a lot better by attracting me to join Teesside many years ago. But really, when I go back to sort of when you play at club level, and then when you play competitively, I'd still sit here today and say the player I strive to be as good as would have been a very good friend, Chris Thomas. First time I played him, I think he beat me 8-1, 9-1. And that was at the English National Championships, which was held in your neck of the woods, Justin, at the David Lloyd Leisure Centre in Lichfield. And I use that as momentum and motivation to improve and become a better player. And within 12 months, back at the David Lloyd Leisure Centre in Lichfield, I only narrowly lost 1-0 to Chris to narrowly miss out on becoming English champion. So yeah, I think when I was back in the day, when I was learning the game, I think Chris Thomas was probably the person that I aim to knock off his perch, as they might say.
You're muted, Justin.
Justin?
You're muted, mate.
Muted, yeah. It's all right. That's why I'll never be a TV host.
We've all done it. We've all done it.
So I was just going to say that the Mike Parnaby comment, well, I'm sure the sentiment would be shared from Chris Thomas, actually, because Mike Parnaby was very influential over the development of Chris, Matthew and Peter, and like Sir David Russell as well. So quite interesting. He's had a big influence on the game, Mike has. But yeah, great answer, Chris. So thanks for that. So Justin, with yourself growing up, who was one player you'd look up to?
Yeah, interesting. I'm quite glad that Chris skipped over Roy Holden quite quickly, because Roy's the person who I'm going to obviously have to say. If you're not sort of aware of Roy Holden was basically the godfather of Subbuteo in Wolverhampton. I think that's pretty much fair to say. The club that Roy ran was very open. He was literally, as soon as you opened the door and you walked in, you got a big beaming smile from Roy, and he was very, very welcoming. But not only that, from that point of view, and the fact that he encouraged all of the youngsters and all of everybody that went to the club, he also was a very, very experienced and a very good quality player. I've got a list here, which I'm not going to read out fully, but he was the West Midlands champion. He was the Midlands champion, Staffordshire champion twice, 3 staff cups. He won the league that many times they haven't got the full amount of records for it. I can't say enough about the guy. I was absolutely gutted when I found out that he passed away in 2011, I think it was. And when I started the club back up, which was 2016, the first event that we had, I actually called it the Roy Holden Trophy. And I got his 2 daughters, Samantha and Joanne, to come along and present the trophy for us. And it was a great event. Went really, really well. And one of the nice things about the event was that it was played in the spirit that Roy, would have played any event himself. Always very, very sporting. So it was fantastic to be able to do that, put that on. And we've actually carried that on each year. We now play the Roy Holden Trophy, so that's great. Apart from last year, because obviously we were messed up. But hopefully this year we'll get to play that again at some point.
Okay, well, great answer. Thanks for the insight as well, and the memory of Mr. Holden. It's obviously very sad, but what a legacy. What I'd like to do now is ask the next question, but I'm going to combine this into 2 questions into one, really. So I'm going to go back to Chris. Who would you say and describe as being the best player you have faced in the UK in your time, and the best player you faced in the world? And you've faced quite a few, haven't you? So it's quite a difficult question. You need to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, tough question. When you say the best player faced in the UK, do you mean a UK-based player?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah, difficult one really. I think on consistency, again, you're probably looking at Chris Thomas, but I think the one player that really springs out to mind, who, believe it or whether you don't, he doesn't feel he needs to practice and train, but always tends to compete at a very, very high level, is Darren Clark. Yeah, I remember playing Darren many a times, and yeah, you would just never ever get close to beating him. But I think it was a tournament I decided at the last minute to go and play him down in Warminster. I think it was organised by Cyril Mitchener, if you remember those names. And I must have just played an absolute blinder and beat Darren 3-0. So yeah, Darren is probably the most naturally gifted UK-based player.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. And in terms of the world?
Well, that's a very easy one. There's a hell of a lot of good players out there, and not going to disrespect anybody whatsoever. But I think anybody who's played competitively out of all four of us on the European and the world stage, it's just one word: Flores.
Yeah, it's like a nightmare word, isn't it? Actually, for many of us.
Yeah, the man's a machine. He takes no prisoners, and probably totally the opposite to Darren Clark, because he openly admits to put in at least 6 hours a day into training. So yeah,
I've often found when I've been a captain of a club, and I have been a few times, if we're drawn against whatever team Carlos is playing in, I always say to one of the other lads, "This is going to be a great character building experience for you." And they'd always say, "Why aren't you choosing to play against him?" I say, "As I say, it's a great character experience for you, not for me."
Yeah, it's a very difficult game to be involved in. I think that the closest result I've ever had against him was something like 6-3. But I think I was 5-0 down. So yeah, he's just unbelievable.
Yeah, he is. I agree with you on that. Okay, so Horst, you need to take yourself off mute.
Yes, I'm online. I can hear you.
Great. So, best player you have faced that's from the UK in your time, and obviously the best player you faced in the world. Difficult question, the world one, I know, but are both difficult.
Well, yeah, that's always a very interesting question. Who is the best player in which country or in the world? Of course, like Chris said, there are many guys, and we do not want to respect them, disrespect them. Of course, from my side, during my time in the 80s, in the 90s, the best player for me at that time was Kevin Dyson. And I faced him 2 times at the ETF Europa Cup, once 89 in the group stage in Switzerland. And I will never forgive Kevin for beating me 4-1, which was a disaster for me, because at that time I was actually leading the group and actually qualified for the quarterfinals. But Kevin, I don't know, he was on fire at that moment, because it was his last chance to get through to the quarterfinals. And he played a fantastic game and he beat me 4-1. But a few years later, I was able to get a little revenge at the ETF Europa Cup in Fareham in England, when I got him in the semi-finals, and I beat him, I think, 2-1. And I reached the ETF Europa Cup final in '93. And I won the final at that time. So I was actually the only Austrian to win the ETF Europa Cup in the 30th edition. So quite proud on that. So Kevin Dyson was actually a really good and concentrated player. A very nice guy, very calm, very quiet. So he's one of those characters you will never ever forget from the UK. Of course, there are many other players like Bob Varney, and many others, or like Jim Law from Scotland. The old guys like me now, they are around 60 years old, maybe between 55 and 65. So that's the age they all have now. In the world, at that time in the 80s, in the 90s, we had, of course, Renzo Frignani. We had Martin Bomm. We had Willi Hoffmann. We had also our good friend Angelos Tsakiris from Greece. We had Christophe Fouzeau from France, Frédéric Hernandez from France. We had Dominique DeMarco, and everybody lost against me. All of them. I beat all of them. So I beat Willi Hoffmann at a Grand Prix tournament. I beat Angelo Tsakiris in Chicago in 1994. Just a few weeks before my son was born in 94. And they were amazing guys. Also, of course, Eric Nazali in the 80s, in the 90s, also a fantastic player. Definitely not to forget. And the Austrians, like Robert Lenz, Michael Sieber, Gerhard Ecker. So there is quite a numerous number of players we had. And also Axel Schneider or Horst Becker from Germany, or Wolfgang Schneider. So there is a massive number of players which had a high quality in the 80s and in the 90s. A different quality than you can see it today on the table. Everybody's talking about Carlos Flores. I would like to play Carlos one day, even if I'm 88 and I've got 2 walking sticks. I would like to play Carlos. That would be the Big Bang Theory for me. And I would like to play with flat figures against him, and I would play with him on a little square millimeter. I would play with him tick and tock. That's what I would like to do, and he wouldn't even touch a ball. So I would love to play Carlos, even with his pressure or with his character. But maybe it will happen one day, maybe not. I don't know.
So I know you mentioned. I think the question though, Horst, is who would you describe as the best player you've faced in the world? So you've got to really, put not sitting on the fence and come out with the answer.
Well, I would practically come back to Renzo Frignani, Martin Bomm, and Willi Hoffmann. I mean, those 3 guys were for me the amazing guys.
Okay, they were brilliant players. Yeah, so that's fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Justin, now I know that you played, in the Champions League with Wolverhampton, so you probably had some evil matches in that. But I would say to you, obviously, the same question: who's the best player you faced in the UK and in the world?
Okay, it was a Europa League actually, not a Champions League, but yeah. So from my perspective, I think the way that I've kind of looked at this as a question, obviously listening to Christian and Horst, I think the only way I could really judge whether a player is really top class or not is to play them regularly, or at least play 5 or 6 games against them to be able to know. Anybody can beat you in a one-off game. That's the way I feel about it. So for me, the player that I've played most regularly in the UK, I've never played yourself, interestingly, Justin, and I've never played Horst either. So I'd really, really love to get those games. I know we've talked about that, and hopefully that will happen soon. Yeah. But the player that I've played most regularly, that I've struggled against the most and had some really damn good games against, is the man who's also on the screen, and that's Christian Short. So, I've had some great games with Christian. Christian's taught me some things, which is quite funny, really, when you think about the Anthony Beddoes. I taught Anthony kind of then, and then now I'm learning from Christian. So it's quite fantastic, really. Good evening. So that's fantastic. Christian is a great player, and hopefully we get him to come to the club plenty more times in the future, and I'll get my chance to beat him. But I've never actually beaten Christian. I'm not sure if I might have squeezed a draw or something, but that's about as good as it's got for me so far. But the games have gradually got closer and closer, and I'm hoping that at some point I'll manage to do that. Your question about in the world, I've not got a great deal of experience worldwide, so the people that I've played, that are not from the UK, is kind of limited. The Europa League definitely was an eye opener, but we did actually quite reasonably. I don't think any of us got absolutely obliterated in any games. I think. We all had some quite reasonable scores, and in a couple of games I was actually leading at half time, and they've ended up swapping the player out so that they can get the win, and I've ended up playing their best player to I know there was one game where I was 2-0 up at half time, and I ended up losing 3-2 to their top player. But in all fairness, the one-off game that I had against Alexander Haas was at Heckmondwijk a couple of years back, and Alexander was just absolutely on another level that day. He scored to go 1-0 up, and I equalised 1-1, and then I never saw the ball again, apart from picking it out the back of my net, and it was 9-1 was the final score. And the one thing that we've always wanted to try and limit to, where the guys at the club, we've always said never want to lose by 10. So to lose 9-1, I was quite pleased that I managed to keep it under 10. But yeah, Alexander was pure class that day. The person that I would just mention was Jason Pisani, that I played in the Europa League, and Jason, I obviously speak to him on Facebook as well, and is also a quality player. And I think Jason beat me 5-0, 5-1 that day, and that was possibly my worst defeat in the Europa League. So it was good overall.
Well, you're not as bad as the Southampton manager, are you? Because he's lost twice 9-0.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But look, I think great. There were some great answers there. I think with Chris, I mean, I've got first-hand experience, obviously living quite close to you guys, but with Chris coming around to my house quite a few times, with Matt Lampett, it feels like I've been down. When he's gone, I feel like I've been to the gym.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So it's. I don't want to tell him that when I'm playing him, but I can tell you that I am absolutely knackered when I say, "See you, Chris." I'll shut the door and I'm going, "Thank God for that." Yeah. So there are some great players around the world, aren't there? So it's really always difficult to answer this question, but you can only go by the experiences you've had, and that's what the question was about, really. So I'm going to go back to Chris now. So really interesting question, this one. Out of all the games you played, what has been your most memorable match? You're on mute.
Better.
Okay.
So I had these questions obviously earlier on in the week, so I've spent quite a lot of time trying to think about since 1994, right the way through till around about 2 years ago, because activity on the green phase, as they say, has been limited the last 2 years. A hell of a lot of good games with a hell of a lot of good people. The one that really stuck out to mind was back when we were part of a Cardiff San Siro team with David Lauder, Philip Dacey, myself, and Chris Thomas. Went to a tournament. I think it was in Glasgow, if I remember rightly, and it was the team event. And we were drawn against Stella Artois Milano in the semi-finals. And we knew it was going to be a big challenge because they got a really good team. Bruno Mazzeo, Galeazzi. Those are the two that spring to mind. I can't remember the other two players, but I played Galeazzi, and I was had a bit of a nightmare first half, and I was losing 3-0 at half time. And Chris Thomas came across to me, even though there was a scoreboard in the room, and you could clearly see the score. He asked me that fatal question: "What's the score?" Now, because we're online, I daren't repeat what I said to him, but it involved have a look at the scoreboard. And then I sat there at half time, legs folded next to the table, telling myself how the hell I was going to turn that game around. As a team, we were losing, and it was really important to us. We wanted to beat them. So we kicked off for the second half. I must have played the most unbelievable half I've ever played in my life. Managed to get the game back to 3-3. Things were going on the other tables, but as a club, as a team, we were still losing. And I had a very difficult situation in defence where I was blocked in, and the only way I could get out was by trying to do a deflection off two of Galeazzi's players and hit my lone striker, which was a long way up the pitch. I did so, managed to clip the ball through, came off the edge of my base on my one and only striker. The ball was on the roll into the shooting area, and I planted it into the top corner for 4-3, which was just incredible. But to top that off, we were still losing as a club. 3 seconds left on the clock. Philip Dacey scores the winner against Mazzeo, and we actually progress as a team then to the final. Don't ask me what happened in the final. It should matter, but because of the antics of the semi-final and the result we got, we were absolutely delighted to have got to the final. So, yeah, the game against Galeazzi is probably one of my most memorable recoveries. So,
yeah, well, great story. I've never heard that about that match. So, sounds fantastic. I mean, 3-0 down, coming back is mentally very tough, but brilliant result that, and great result for the team as well. So. Now we're going to ask the same question to Justin. So what has been your most memorable match?
I've found this really, really difficult as a question because I've had so many good matches over the years, and it is a really, really difficult one. I've got a couple of different ones, really. I think that the one that probably stands out the most, I'll talk about that last, but just going to mention a 1-0 win in a tournament that we had in Wolverhampton. And I played against Andy Garbett of Lincoln Flickers. And that was in the final. And I actually won that one 1-0. I scored early on. And then Andy absolutely battered me for the rest of the game. But I managed to hold on to win the trophy, which was nice. I also had another good final in the Wolverhampton Open against my team colleague, Richard Badger. And where we were 0-0. In the final, and we went into extra time, and I scored 2 really quickly in the first half of extra time. We turned around, played second half, and Richard said to me at half time, he said, "That's it, I'm dead, I've got no chance now." And I said, "No, Richard," said, "I've seen you do this before, you can easily get back in this game." And of course, what happened 2 minutes later, we were 2-2, went to shots, and I actually won on shots, which was fantastic from that point of view. But again, overall, it was a great game. But the one game that I'd probably mention as the most vivid memory for me really was the game against Tom Burns, which was actually played in Drury, London Road Club. And we were playing a team event, and I came up against Tom Burns, and I was expecting to get absolutely battered. But first half, I hit my first shot, the ball screams into the net, ball's on the run, screams in the net, 1-0 up. Tom's completely disbelief that I've just done what I've done. The second goal, I do exactly the same again, straight down the middle, ball's in the net again, and Tom's now wondering what the hell's hit him. And then the third goal was just sublime, and the guys captured it on video, which was absolutely fantastic. But I actually curled my man with flat bases, curled my man around his defender, knocked the ball forward into the shooting area and hit it on the run right in the top corner. And that was a stunning goal. So I was 3-0 up at half time. And I got absolutely annihilated second half. And we ended up 3-3 draw at the end of the game. But it was just such a fantastic feeling to go those 3 goals up against somebody that, wasn't expecting it. And Tom's such a good player. We've had some fantastic games since as well. So that would probably be my main memory from as my best game.
Oh, a fantastic story. It's always great. Sometimes I've always said it's not always about winning, is it? I mean, sometimes just coming back and drawing is just, particularly if it's in a team event, it's like as such an incredible, we could have such an incredible result on the whole match for the team. And so, you know, drawing isn't always a bad thing. Drawing is different, I suppose, in individual, but I think that's what makes the team event so much more fun.
Yeah, I mean, for me on that one, it was, you know, Tom was so nice about the whole thing anyway, but we had a really good laugh afterwards and a good chat about the game, and it was just great atmosphere. The whole thing around it was more than just the game, really. Brilliant.
Well, now I'm going to ask the next question, so it's going to be Horst. So, Horst, what has been your, and you've probably, God knows how many memorable matches you've had. I mean, winning the ETF Cup, I mean, it's almost the equivalent of the World Cup anyway, isn't it? The ETF Cup. So winning that is amazing. So what has been your most memorable match in your lifetime?
Yeah, as the others said, as Chris and Justin said, a very difficult situation to specify that. But of course, I was in the ETF Europa Cup final in 1993, when I was able to play Tonio Montesino from Malta in the Europa Cup final, which was absolutely amazing at that time. It was just before the time, or it was during the time when FISTF started to get into motion. And then in the year 2000, when Austria was the host nation for the FISTF World Cup, I prepared myself for that World Cup 1 year in advance. So I lost over 9 kilograms on weight at that time, going down to 81 kilograms. I was running and training like hell to get myself completely into shape. And I said, that's going to be my World Cup. And practically I did that. And I played Massimo Conti from Italy in the final of the veterans category. And it was such an amazing final because the match lasted over 1 hour because we had to go into extra time and also into golden goal. And it was the final finished, I think, at 9:15 in the evening. So I was practically playing 12 hours on table football from 9 o'clock in the morning until 21 o'clock in the evening. So it was amazing. And I beat Massimo Conti 5-4 in the final, in the veterans final. And I was leading 2-0. Then he came back, equalized for 2-2 at halftime. I went 4-2 ahead again in the second half. No, it was 2-2. I have to apologize. 2-2. It was after 30 minutes, 4-4 after 60 minutes. And in the golden goal, I scored the 5th goal to win it 5-4, which was one of the most amazing matches ever. And there was such a big crowd in the hall. We had a very nice sports hall in Vienna, which was demolished many years ago. And something else was constructed in that area. But it was really crazy. The Austrians were pushing me. Everybody was behind me. And actually, there is a documentary of that World Cup from Channel 4 on YouTube. If you look on YouTube, you can Google Subbuteo Vienna 2000, World Cup 2000. You can see the final goal against Massimo. That's it, actually. That was the most amazing match ever.
That's great. Great. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think, so what I'm doing, I'll have a little break from the questions for yourselves. We've had a question in from, the Richard Roper, guys. So he's basically asked, how do we break this is his question. How do we break the flat bases modern game mentality of certain people and clubs of being anti-advanced Subbuteo rules? Ask, are they playing tabletop Subbuteo? And he's kind of asking, can we accommodate the other version? I think the first thing to say to that question anyway is to say that in the next World Cup, I believe they're having an old Subbuteo style World Cup as well. So they're having that category. So that will allow the old style players to play and qualify for that World Cup, which is going to be fascinating. I think the flat basis situation is, unfortunately, it's just part of the game today. What we have to remember as well is that when we used to play Subbuteo as kids, I think it was really quite difficult to get players to slide like they can today. So it's a lot easier for kids to play today, to pick the game up and play. And if we're going to make the game more accessible for children, kids to learn about the game, we need to make it easy for them to play. In the same way, it's easy to pick up a joypad and play on the FIFA on the PlayStation. It's easy, and we need to remember that. But I think there is a place for the old style game. Absolutely, I think we should embrace it. I think there's a huge audience, particularly in the UK, of people that collect the game, that attend lots of different events, collectors. We need to embrace that more than we are, and I think that's something that needs to happen over the next few years, because the collectors are a far bigger audience than the players nowadays, in my opinion, particularly in the UK. I'm not so sure about Europe, but certainly in the UK, there are literally thousands more collectors than there are players. So we need to engage with those people, because if we can get those people to come back and play, that's brilliant. And if it is the old rules, so be it. I'd rather play in a tournament with more people than less people, just because we are happy with flat bases. I would rather, I want to play as many people as possible in an event. That's the key, I think. So great question from Richard. This is one for you, Chris, though. And so this
Justin,
yeah.
I would love to say something on that, gentleman. Just you answered the question with the basis. Is that possible?
What's that? What's possible?
You had a question which you just answered to that gentleman who had a question about the basis, the flat basis. And
yeah, I don't think he's aware that there's going to be an old style Subbuteo World Cup next. That's been planned in, so the answer's already been made. I think a decision's already been made that we're going to have an old style Subbuteo World Cup. So
that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
That means that we're going to answer that question, and it allows those players to play in that format. So
yes, with the old Subbuteo rules. So the idea from FISTF during my time as General Secretary was, how are we going to get all those players into FISTF and give them the opportunity to play the old style of Subbuteo with certain original rules and materials. So that's why I made a resolution for the Congress last year, and I specified the old Subbuteo or classical Subbuteo World Cup, so that we can invite everybody who says, I want to play the old style, but we have to create some basement for them to play. Yeah, if we don't give them the World Cup in that direction, then we're not going to win those players back into FISTF.
Yeah.
So that's a direction of unification. We are all playing table football. Yeah. And Subbuteo is just a registered trademark. Yeah, everybody knows my opinion, or most of the people know my opinion. So what we have a game, we have a sport, and we have certain materials. So that's the question for the executive committee to create the future classical type of playing, to bring that back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think we have quite a lot of events in the UK with old style Subbuteo. I've attended a few of them. One in particular was in Maidenhead, and when I attended that event, there were about 30 Italian players that attended the event. I've never seen a FISTF event in the UK with 30 Italian players, but I have seen it with the old style Subbuteo event. So that answered a big question for me about let's engage with this to get everybody together. If it means we have to have different formats in an event, then fine. Let's do that instead of having open and vets. Maybe let's have one open and let's have two opens, one old style, one new style, and do it that way. And maybe we will embrace and engage and have more people attend our events and a greater interest, and it will help clubs like Wolverhampton as well and all the other clubs around the country to have those players attending. But it's a long subject. We could probably talk about it for hours, actually. But I just thought I'd share the fact that it's going to be in the World Cup, and that's good news for the old style game. Just a question for Chris. So this is from Mr. Bob Varney. All right. So I believe that you're one of our most underrated champions. Why do you think that is? Question mark. Could it be that you spent too long as a squad player at Valletta? Derek, I hope you're watching. Or your unassuming personality? Either way, does that lack of recognition frustrate you? You need to take yourself off mute. Quite a direct question from Mr. Varney, I have to say.
Thank you for the question, Bob. I don't think anything really ever frustrates me. So I'm a pretty down-to-earth guy. You know, I didn't even realise I was, you know, the recognition level wasn't there as a player. So I'm very, you know, modest. See myself as a competitive player. But on the comment of being a squad player for Valletta for many years, yeah, the choice to be a squad player for Valletta was probably the decision I made when I actually joined Valletta, which is now almost 10 years ago. And I knew I was always going to be on the fringe. But, you know, to win things, to experience friendships and build, you know, build what's actually more like a family now with the Maltese guys. You know, you do have to do these things sometime. But I enjoy spending time with Valletta. And in fact, one of my fondest memories of playing table football is with Valletta in Paris when I was fortunate enough to score the golden goal extra time winner in a team event to take us through to the final. So yeah, I just enjoy more so the friendship through traveling with people that you know you get used to over the years. We all go on about how Subbuteo has been a big part of all our lives and the most memorable games and results within our careers. But I think the most memorable part of the whole of the setup of the Subbuteo world is the friendships that have been made with people like, you know, the Maltese, which if you were sitting on your computer playing FIFA, you would never make those friendships. You'd never spend time with these people and get used to, you know, how they live their lives, and the Maltese are exceptionally dedicated to table football. So I enjoy my time with Valletta. It's coming to an end. But yeah, in answer to Bob's question, I don't get frustrated about many things in life, to be fair. So I just take it as it comes.
Yeah, I think also, to be fair to yourself, I mean, we've got, you know, a very strong England Open team. If everybody could partake, and if I was head of the selectors choosing the team, you'd be in the England team. You know, from my perspective, I'd select you as part of the England team. So it's quite difficult actually to be the number one in England, isn't it? Really, because, you know, whether it's Casper, whether it's Chris Thomas, whether it's Darren, whether it's Chris Short, even like Matt Lampett coming through. You know, in the open category, we've got some other players like Elliot Belafontaine coming through. You know, it's quite a tough gig now, but you'd certainly, in my opinion, be in the England team. So I would say that you are very recognised from that perspective. Question for Horst now. This is from a player that often describes himself as winning in both formats of the game, English champion in both formats of the game. He's got a wonderful personality. Bob Varney again, by the way. He's asked, we both played to a high level at ETF and FISTF events. I had a break of many years between the two, but you didn't. This is Bob's question. What was the most difficult part for you personally in transitioning from ETF to FISTF? Horst.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was a part of a team with Laurent Garnier, with Billy Hoffman, making the transition from ETF to FISTF, all uniting FISA and ETF. And from the organizational point of view, I was supporting Willy Hoffman in the sports department. Many people don't know that, but I spent hours and hours of working on Willy for certain documentation. On the game, for the game, I was already aware that new rules are going to come. And Willi discussed with me quite very often. He discussed what can be the changes of the game, yeah, like a throw-in or corner, how many flicks you can make at the corner, at the throw-in, when the free kick started to come, yeah. So if you had a fast play and the player intercepted with a defending player, then you had a free kick, yeah, and then we had those flick kicks, and then you had only the possibility to flick one player, yeah. In the past, we were able to make 2 flicks for a free flick, yeah, okay. So there were certain transitions, but for me it was a very smooth flow because I learned the rules of FISTF already in '92 before the first event came, yeah. And in '92 I played with the new FISTF rules. I played Renzo Frignani in Verviers or some Greek guys, and it was a different game for them. As for me, yeah, coming from ETF, I had to play FISA players. They had the old Subbuteo rules, yeah, the hardcore rules, and we had the hardcore rules from ETF. But we had to unite into the FISTF rules. So there was a lot of questions on the referees, yeah, and you had to be very concentrated that you get it correct. So for me, it was not such a big problem, yeah, even that I had to take the big board from ETF, and we played then with a smaller ball from FISA. Yeah, we had suddenly metal goals. The FISA players had only the plastic goals. So also from the material, it was a transition time for everybody. Yeah, it was a good transition period because we want to do something big. Yeah, we need to have a very strong, organized FISTF on the sports level and on the organizational level, as well on the administrational level. And that was the target at that time. So for Bob, I can say it was not such a big problem because I played only 1-2 years later in '94. Austria played a fantastic World Cup in the teams event when we were knocked out by Portugal in the semi-finals, which was a big tragedy for the Austrian team at that time. And there was also Vasco Guimarães coming from FISA, Felipe Maia, and all the great guys from Portugal, as well as the Belgium guys. The Belgium guys, they played FISA events, they played ETF events, and then they played FISTF events, like the Austrians did. Yeah, so we were a mixture of everything. So we didn't have such a big problem in the transition period. Yeah, we were used to the big balls, to the small balls, to those rules, to the other rules. So it was a fantastic time for us. Yeah. Others had it maybe a little bit more difficult. The Italians had at the beginning from '92 until, let's say, '96, '97, '98. Yeah, they had big problems in adapting to the game because they were so in the old FISTF, in the old FISA rules, that only the new generations which partially came into the game and they learned the FISTF rules. And then it came the big boost of the Italians when they started to take over FISTF and winning World Cups on every occasion. Yeah.
No, thanks. Thanks, Horst. We've had a couple of anecdotal comments to share with you. We've had, so Bob was paying you a compliment, Chris. He's also mentioned that you won the last National League by winning every match. So he remembers that, because obviously you stuffed him, which is great. Thank you for that. And Darren Clark has said, Shorty never gives you an easy goal. Top fella. And I can agree with him on that. You don't like giving away an easy goal, do you? I think Bob's also asked another question, Horst, which was to do with your biggest defeat in 2006. And he's asking who your biggest defeat was in 2006.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Bob Varney. Thank you. Yeah, that was a disastrous match for me, actually, because I will never forget that, because on that day I was actually in quite a good mood. The Austrian team was in a good mood. And we had England in the semi-finals in Dortmund. And only a few days earlier, I came back from a very long business trip from Romania, and I tried to get myself really fit, but I was very tired, even though I had good games on that weekend. But Bob was on that day a little bit too big for me. He knows that, yeah. And what I will never forget in that game, he was talking like an old woman permanently. My friend Bob was talking permanently, and that confused me completely because I hate talking during the match. Talking was, are you ready? Did you flick? Did you flick 2 times? Did you flick 3 times? So that was something which annoyed me a little bit, and I told that Bob after the match that he was talking too much. And I prefer to have a quiet player and let the referee decide, and not to talk and play the game. Yeah, that's it.
He's very good at that. Psychology, he's numero uno for that one. I mean, I remember playing him many times when he'd get his wooden box out, and he'd have a glorious wooden box. It'd be the best wooden box out of any player on the circuit. He'd have his smart haircut with his wedge, with his blazer. And I thought I was playing Businessman of the Year. You know, he was really intimidating. And he was a very good player, but he did like to have a little chat with the referee. Of course, that often helped influence certain decisions, but that's the fun part of the game. I think the interesting thing for the transition of the game is I found it very easy to go from the small ball to the big ball, actually, in the 80s, because I just felt like the game was easy to play with the big ball. Because if you're training with the small ball and then you play with the big ball, the only real difference is shooting, because hitting the ball is so much easier. So the shooting was the challenge, and just perfecting the shooting. But the rest of it, I found an easy transition, actually. So that was always an interesting phase that we went through in history. What I'd like to do now is move on to the next question, and this is, which is your favourite tournament? So just one tournament. Pick one that you've been to, that you find you've been to many times, maybe. Which do you find being the most enjoyable tournament? So, Justin, what would you say to that?
It's a difficult one, because obviously I've only kind of been back from 2017, but the one that we've done we've done a couple of times now is Glasgow, and the Glasgow Grand Prix is, as you know, is just a wonderful event. I know in previous shows that you've had, Glasgow has been mentioned, and obviously Tom Burns. But I'd also like to mention Dave Gladman, who does a lot of work behind the scenes as well with Tom. And I'm sure there's other people behind the scenes as well that do work. But, it's a fantastically run event. It really is. And obviously the evenings are always pretty good and pretty special as well. So, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, for me, I'd have to say that one. But a special mention also to the clubs that are part of our interclub, which is ourselves, London Road in North Wales, Derry over in Northern Ireland, and of course Glasgow and their club there as well. So the four of us play an interclub event each year, and we should have played last year in Glasgow, which was unfortunately cancelled, but hopefully we'll get to do that one soon. But it's been great fun playing in those events. Yeah,
interestingly, Glasgow is such a fantastic event. I got a lift off you guys, didn't I, when the flights were cancelled?
That's right. Yeah. So, exactly for you, but you just happened to fall lucky that we were still in the vicinity at the time. Yeah,
I was lucky. I mean, I remember being in the after, because they always have that entertainment, the live entertainment in Glasgow, which is always hilarious and a great night out. Yeah. I was actually chatting one year to Rita Turner at the bar, otherwise known as Tina Turner, which was an interesting experience. I go anywhere near her because I think she'd kill me. But anyway, the cat's just charged across Chris's table. So, Chris, favourite tournament? You're on mute.
Pretty easy one for me to answer that one, I suppose, because I would always class how you can determine which is your favourite tournament. by the level of competitors that turn up there, the intense level of competition that is there for you on that weekend as well. So, and the organizer who's been devoted to the game for many, many years, Olivier Père. So I think he deserves, great credit for the efforts that he puts into Mons every year. Very enjoyable tournament. Long, hard weekend. Never an easy game. But you get out of the weekend what you put in, but you also get to spend a hell of a lot of time with a lot of friends that you don't see very often. So yeah, for me, Mons.
It's also great being a squad player at Mons because they've got a wonderful bar with lots of beer.
Yeah, not much use to me though, as I don't drink. So I know you benefit from it, just you probably. So
Jupiler. Yeah. Horst, favourite tournament? What's your favourite tournament?
Favorite tournament? Well, actually, the ETF Europa Cup was for me the most amazing tournament. It was always in different countries. On the one side, Switzerland or Germany, Austria, Belgium, England, Scotland, Wales. So that was always for me the highlight for the year. And then, of course, later the FISTF World Cup and the FISTF European Championships. And yeah, those were actually the most important tournaments or the favorites I love to go to. These were always amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I remember the ETF Cup in Malta. Actually, I think it was maybe '94. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I remember we were out having a meal with the players, and you were on the table, and it was the after the first day, and I'm quite happy to share this. And you said to me, Justin, why are you such a nice guy, but such an asshole on the pitch?
Yeah.
You did say it at the table, yeah, which was it's got in there.
Well, okay, you remember, but I don't remember it. But it just reflects my character. Yes, absolutely. Well, if you get an impression of a person like you, Justin, or many of the other guys, like for instance Bob Varney, you can go and have with Bob Varney a super time, a super character, a great person, like Kevin Dyson and many of the others. And of course, sometimes I go over the border and say, why are you such an asshole on the table? Yeah, because you're a nice guy. Yeah, I mean, it's maybe we table football players or we Subbuteo players, we can become assholes on the green pitch because we love the game, we want to win. And if I would play today against Willie or against you, Justin, or if I would play Justin Scott or Chris Short, maybe I could be an asshole myself. Yeah. That's also possible. So that is not excluded now, yeah, because everybody wants to win, yeah. And in Austria, we always had the training to be fair in the game. So if you're touching a player, or if you're touching a player, you make a finger foul or anything, or you touch with the shirt any player. You say in Austria, I made a foul, yeah, and you're extremely fair. That was in Austria always standard. It's also today like that. But if you play internationally, you let the referee decide. Yeah. And many players, yeah, and we have to train it. We have to train this kind of fair play and fair game. But when you if you want to become world champion, I can say 100%. Everybody would love to become a world champion. If you've got the chance to do that, I think you will forget that little bit of fairness. You will forget it. You will let the referee decide.
Yeah, you have to be ruthless to be the best.
Pardon? You have to be
ruthless.
Ruthless up to a certain point. But if you're doing things extremely and repeatedly in a game to be an asshole, then you don't deserve to become a world champion.
No, of course.
If you do, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So you have to keep a certain level. Yeah, if you make a finger foul and it doesn't influence the game for yourself, yeah. Then you say, I made a finger foul, you give a free kick to the player, yeah. I've done that hundreds of times, yeah. But sometimes there is a chance where you can score an important goal. And then you will have this ruthlessness in your mind and say, shut up, let the referee decide. Yeah, he's there, he's got a job to do, okay? And that's the point. And I have been referee in a World Cup final. I've been referee in Austrian Cup finals, in important matches. And when I'm a referee, I'm so deeply in the game, so highly concentrated that I will see every finger foul, that I will see every bad thing happening on the table. And that makes also a good referee. You're not only a good player, but you have to be a concentrated referee, yes? Even in my old days, maybe one day I will achieve again to be a referee in a top-level match, yeah? Because I love to be a referee, but you have to be fully concentrated in it and to see everything, even if you have to go down with your face on the table to see on the pitch everything what is happening behind the fingers, behind the hands, whatever can happen. And that makes a good referee, yeah? And that's what...
Yeah. No, I think what you find actually, the world's best players are actually very fair. If you ever play someone like Vasco, he's an amazingly fair player, you know, but he's just in a different category to most players. You know, I'd put him in the same bracket as Flores. But you have those players that are on the periphery of success, the ones that could be great, but they feel they have to push, I suppose, their opportunities, their ruthlessness with decisions sometimes over the edge. And that's where you get the conflict, because they're not probably capable of winning without having that extra fire and edge. And I guess that's where you get sometimes conflict in matches because of that situation. And that's just life, actually. It's no different to tennis. If you watch some of the world's top tennis players that are on the periphery of being successful, there are some that have really bad personalities, actually, and they become quite aggressive and because they're on the edge of being great. But they haven't got there, so they're frustrated as well. So it's interesting. It's an interesting topic. So I want to move on to next question because we are running out of time now. But here's an interesting one. Justin, which game rule? Richard's mentioned goalposts for jumpers, jumpers for goalposts. Sorry, jumpers for goalposts. To you, which game rule do you dislike the most?
Good question. I think for me, I think I just wanted to sort of mention something that Richard Roper mentioned earlier. From our perspective as a club, we actually have an old Subbuteo night. We were actually planning to have that every month. I think we've done probably 2 before we went into lockdown. So that's something that we were trying to accommodate. We were playing on old pitches with old Subbuteo players, and we were trying to kind of build a bit more from that point of view. And so I just wanted to kind of mention that. And in actual fact, our preference as a club originally was to play with the advanced rules, and we did for probably 18 months played with the old Subbuteo advanced rules. And to be fair, we all probably prefer those rules, if I'm totally honest. But because of the fact that obviously the FISTF rules are played by so many more people in a competitive environment, we decided that we were going to change and we were going to play those rules. And we were fortunate in the fact we put it to the vote as a club. Yeah. And the majority actually said, no, we agree, we want to play the wider game and go and visit Glasgow and Lincoln and North Wales and Gravesend and wherever else we were going to play. So yeah, from that perspective, we made the decision to move to those FISTF rules. However, for me, the rule, I think there's a few rules that I'm not massively keen on, but the one that stands out to me really is the free kicks. I always feel that you're forming an attack, you're really going for it, you're looking for a goal, and then all of a sudden some player wipes your player out and you get a free kick and you put your man down on the ball and you get one flick, and really, to me, the distance that you get isn't enough. It's not in line with a free kick in real football for me. And also the fact that you only get one flick doesn't really then give you any advantage. So for me, I feel that you lose the advantage that you had at that moment in time too much. And so I would prefer to have either just the 2 flicks or even the greater distance. I think would give you that little bit more of the advantage that you originally had, and not lose that. So for me, would definitely be the free kicks, I think.
Yeah, so quite a popular answer actually on that front. So Chris, I'd like to ask you the same question. Which game rule do you dislike the most?
Well, because the rules have changed over the years that I have been playing, I can only really go on what we play today. And I think the smashing rule, which was brought in by FISTF, has a couple of little areas where it's very difficult to actually progress through the defence gently. I know there's players out there who would deliberately smash your figures out of the way, but I think there's times where you're playing very intricately around the pitch and there's players in close proximity to one another. And I think you need to apply common sense to a couple of the times where I've been pulled up on the smashing rule, where you've clipped off the edge of the ball, it's knocked one of the defenders probably into another one, but not any way in form of smashing, as I would interpret that rule. So yeah, it can be frustrating when you are trying to get out of a little sticky situation, and you get pulled up for a smashing rule. I think the rule's a little bit silly, possibly needs changing. But then again, I agree that gone are the days where you'd be able to kick off from the centre and wipe out someone's defensive line in one flick. So I see the positive sides, but I think it needs tweaking.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, that one, with the grey area though as well, isn't it? Where it's intent or unintentional. So it's where you have a grey area where that becomes, if you base it on common sense, then not everybody will apply common sense, as we saw with Mike Dean at the weekend. So you just, and that's a professional referee, by the way, let alone an amateur referee. So I think it's an interesting point, though, because I think there are times when it's absolutely ridiculous. It's not smashing. It's clearly not smashing. So come on. But I get the grey area will create a problem with certain players. Funny enough, Darren Clark was his. He's mentioned, Justin, not sure I agree with the best players are fairer comment. I think they're all the best players are fairer. Thing is, as they are the best, they are usually winning when it's easy to give away decisions. The ones I've played are just like everyone else when the games are tight and close. Yeah, I get that. I think that what I would say, there are players that are on the periphery though that could be great, but they have to do what they can by all means to get the result they want, because they're not quite good enough on the same level as some others. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that all players are very competitive when it comes to pushing the boundaries, let's say. Horst, what game rule do you dislike the most?
Well, a very difficult situation are the rules of the game. Now, everybody in the world needs to understand the following historical development of the game and of the rules. Now, when we had talks in the 80s to unify ETF and FISA and to create one association or one federation for all the players, we had two boxes: the ETF rules, which derived from the original Subbuteo rules from the 60s, and we had the FISA, which was organized by Worthington Sports Games, and we had the original Subbuteo rules. And the ETF rules already had a certain development inside the game. So there were certain changes made in the 60s and in the 70s to make the game a little bit more into a sport. Yeah, the risk of the fast game. Yeah, the risk of the slow game. Yeah, what happens when figures touch each other in the motion. And what kind of imaginations did the players have using the rules for their own advantages? Now, when Laurent Garnier, Eric Nazali, and Willy Hoffmann, and all those guys at that time, at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, started to create the rules, even myself a little bit with Willy, as I mentioned earlier, then we had to create rules where both members, like Italians and the Greeks, the Spanish, the English, the Germans, the Belgians, the Austrians, were able to come together to have rules for the players. Now, what happened from 92 onwards? From 92 onwards, everybody was united under the flag of FISTF, as we are today. Okay? Now, during the last 25 years, the game developed from the materials, the bases became flatter. We had the Willy Hoffmann figures with the styropor on top, those flat figures, and the players started to create other materials, other figures, and that again developed into imaginational fantasies of the players. How can I take advantage to win a game? Because that was sport. Yeah, it was not anymore a child's game. It was a real sport between men who are adults, who are mature, and they started to create things. And then the smashing came. Yeah, the smashing. Why did that happen? The bases became flatter, became more unified. They were not you were not able to curl around the corner like with the flat figures. Okay. And that has to come back into the game. And every bad thing the players invented, then FISTF had to take action a few years later to create rules to prevent the cheating inside the game. Yeah. So when Eric Verhagen started to create the smashing rules in the 2008 World Cup, I think it was, when the smashing really started to come. Yeah. Flick my figure and I push back 2-3 figures with one special flick. When I made the flick very strongly, but the ball only moved a few millimeters, but the player, the attacking player, started to hit 1, 2, 3 defenders back. So I opened a big gap. Yeah. And many players, like myself, I was pissed off that my defense was practically pushed away. Yeah. So then FISTF had to take the decision. How can we prevent such an unfair play? So the smashing rule came in. And that is always...
the question is about which rule do you dislike?
Actually, the smashing rule. I don't... The problem is that the smashing rule, again, makes the games a little bit... I don't know. On the one side, I don't want that the smashing rule exists, and on the other side, I want that the smashing rule exists. Okay. But the problem is that we have to change the rules on the materials and to give the industry a much more wider ideas or to use the physics to create our sport into something sensationally. Yeah. At the moment, we are too unified. We are inside a square box and coming back to the old Subbuteo rules, which is okay for me, yeah, because it's a different code. But for the sport's sake, so that we can get sponsors, that we can be on television, that we can be in the media, that Germany and England and Spain and Italy have hundreds of clubs, not 5 clubs and not 10 clubs. We need to bring back certain openness for the industry. Yeah, that is the future for table football. A figure which can be seen on television, not a little tiny figure of about 37 millimeters on maximum height, what we have today. Yeah, if you take the flat figures, we need something that the media and the sponsors are going to go crazy for. A super sport. We need to be something like snooker. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think
you understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we understand. I think it's a really important point. That, by the way, that figure looks like your goalkeeper at the ETF World Cup.
No, that is a Christmas present from my son.
Okay. No, it's a joke. Okay. So look, we can talk about, lots of things that can change. I mean, the World Cup, for example, I've always said the World Cup final should always be at a set time, should be 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. The semi-final should be maybe at 5 or 6 or whatever it might be, but it's a fixed time. So then we can sell the rights to the game for television, because if it's fixed, then we can do that and achieve that. But we can't achieve it if we have a tournament with hundreds of players trying to cram in hundreds of games over a period of 2 days. We can never have these set times, and we can never sell the rights to the game for television until we have fixed times. That has to happen one day. But I want to end with one final question. And I'm going to answer this from a memory I have. What is the funniest thing you've experienced in your years of playing? This is like the final question of the evening. I've got, obviously, like the rest of us, we've got some hilarious memories of things that have happened. But I'm going to go and mention Horst Deimel, actually, because I remember, I think it was in Wuppertal in Germany, where I've never seen a man run around a hall with a towel around his neck, pumping himself up for his next match. He was like Steve Ovett running around this tournament, getting himself. I was like, what is he doing? Is he playing football or is he playing table soccer? But anyway, that was one of the funniest things I've seen. And I won't mention Bob Varney's yoga in Madrid, but that's another matter. Justin, what is the funniest thing you've experienced in the game?
Yeah, lots of things. Some that can't be mentioned, some that can. The funniest one for me was when we went over to Northern Ireland, and this is a definite Subbuteo story. This one, we flew over to Northern Ireland for our tournament in Derry, and on the way over, Richard Badger, one of my teammates, put his goalkeeper, obviously, proper cap goalkeeper, puts his goalkeeper into his luggage, and as we go through customs, they pull us up and they say problem, yeah. So as they go through, they go, we found a screwdriver. So they pull out the screwdriver, what they think goalkeeper, and so anyway, on the way back, Richard's like, that's it, I'm not getting caught like that again. I'm putting it in my hand luggage. So I'm gonna do that. So of course we've all had a really good laugh at Richard's expense at this point. On the way back, we walk through, and as we walk through, Richard's taken all of his change and everything, all of his stuff out of his pocket and all that stuff. But as he walks through the scanner, they've literally his bag's gone through, his goalkeeper's gone through, so he knows he's fine. But as he walks through the scanner, they pull him up, and he forgets that he's got a wallet in his pocket. And it's got a metal badge on it. So the alarm's gone off on the scanner. And all I can see is Mick, the other end, Mick Hammonds, who's another teammate of ours, standing at the other end. And he can see Richard. And Richard is stood there in the proper goalkeeper pose, being scanned from head to toe. And, of course, it's just absolutely hysterical. So, obviously you had to be there, but brilliant, really funny.
Fantastic.
Funny for us.
We've all had our experiences at airports. In fact, I don't know what it is, but certainly a few years ago, when you used to go through the airports, the goalkeeper was a big problem. I've been stopped and they've brought out my teams and they've looked at them and they've sort of gone, what is this for? And all this sort of stuff. I mean, I've heard stories of people hiding things in bases, but whether that's true or not, I have no idea. But the goalkeeper rod is always one that is the tricky one, because it could be deemed as a weapon, couldn't it? So I understand why it could be a problem, but they seem to be a bit more lenient with it nowadays, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'd say we haven't had any other problems. It was just that one-off, but say it was brilliant, really funny.
Yeah, brilliant story. Chris, now I know you've got more than your fair share of stories.
Yeah, again, it was a tough one. So for two reasons. Number one, the memory's getting older, and number two, the lack of playing recently means you do tend to forget these events that occur and the times when they happen. So, but I'll take you back to a tournament when we travelled as a team of 3 to Athens. I think it was 1999, and me, Chris Thomas, and Matt Thomas travelled to Athens with Colin Lewis as well from Wales. David Baxter, who Horst mentioned earlier as well from Scotland, came along. And we decided to make a bit of a holiday of the whole tournament. So we spent a couple of days out on Mykonos, which was lovely. But we sailed from Athens to Mykonos, got to the hotel, decided then we would make our way to the beach. David Baxter decided to have a couple of drinks too many, fell asleep on the beach. This was middle of the afternoon. Turned up back at the hotel late at night. He had sunglasses on. He took off his sunglasses and he just looked like that red stripe on Horst's flag behind his head. It was hilarious. We travelled back to Athens for the tournament, played in the tournament, and there was a bit of a disagreement between 2 of the Greek players. Lazarus Papakonstantino, who's very, very calm, never cheats, very fair player. And one of the other Greek guys, and before you know it, the pitch just literally went up in the air. Figures went everywhere, fisticuffs, and all sorts of fighting. And a couple of minutes later, like the Greek armed police turned up in the sports hall, and some people say it was funny, but back at that time, we were relatively young guys, and it was quite scary as well. So, but yeah, it's a really good memory of a tournament. On both of those occasions. So,
well, they carry guns, don't they?
Yeah, they literally just turned up in the sports hall. There was about 3 or 4 armed police, and they weren't little guns; they were proper, like, machine guns. And so it was just incredible to be part of that. But team of 3, we made the final. We knocked out Falcons Athens in the semis, which was an incredible performance. So, on top of everything, when you put everything together as a package, that to me was probably one of the greatest memories from Subbuteo, and one of the most funniest as well. So
you kind of explained that one of the advantages of playing, the social element you get with playing in a tournament, you get to play football on the table, but also you get to play Call of Duty as well, watching the AK-47. So, up yours, console gamers, on that front. But no, Horst, your funniest memory, and you've probably had so many as well.
I don't know what to say, actually. There were so many funny situations with the Austrians during Austrian championships, or traveling with the national team. I really can't remember, to be honest. There were so many things which where you had to laugh days, because it was so funny. But I really can't say. Maybe the training center what we had in the Austrian Alps before 1991, before we went to the ETF Europa Cup. We had a lot of fun with Gerhard Ecker, Michael Hasiba, and Robert Lenz. We were 4 guys. Being 1 week on training center, I organized a training center. Yeah, we were like 1 week only playing, training, biking, going to the sauna, etc. That was, and then also in the evening when you go to lunch, you made a lot of jokes, and it was permanent laughing. Yeah, permanent laughing. But back in 1982, when I was a very young member in the Austrian Association, we had a summer event. And it was very hot in the summer, so everybody was looking forward to get some cold drinks, and I was looking forward to get my ice cream. And everybody was sitting in the restaurant there, and then actually the waitress came to me at the end and said, "What do you want to drink?" And I said, "I would love to have a mixed ice cream, but only with lemon ice cream." That was the most funniest thing for me what I've ever said. So it's a little bit a different memory, but it was actually at a table soccer event in Austria.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say someone nearly went down a ski jump or something, or the toboggan, or when they had a few too. I was wondering whether one of the players attempted to go down the toboggan or maybe tested out the ski jump.
No, nothing like that. I can't remember. No, but
Yeah.
your memory about my person making the warm up before a tournament. Yeah, that's what I did actually at every World Cup, at every Europa Cup. Also in Fairham, there was a big yard next to the hotel, and even before the Europa Cup final, I was going outside, yeah, and doing all kind of gymnastics, running around with my towel and getting my body onto a high temperature, because I had to go into the important games. I always had to go in with a high temperature in the body. I had to be full in motion. It's like when you make a 100-meter sprint, you have to warm up. Yeah, my body had to be absolutely at 1,000 degrees Celsius. But many people like that laughed about that, even at Austrian tournaments and World Cups. And even before the match I played against Bob Varney in 2006, before the semifinals, I had to go outside, warm up, and being on high temperature. That's true. Yeah.
It's still very funny. So look, guys, we're at the end now. I'd just like to, Justin, obviously, absolutely, you're doing a fantastic job with obviously at the moment it's really difficult, but what a fantastic job you're doing with the Wolverhampton Table Football Club. So I just want to say, big well done to you for what you're doing there. You're leading by example. Hopefully we can see other clubs form and associate themselves with football clubs, because what you're doing with Wolves is brilliant, having the home and away shirts. We spoke about it earlier, but it's tremendous. And I think it's something that I'd like you to share a little bit before we go.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it earlier, as you said. I mean, from our perspective, we obviously, I started playing again 2017, late 2016, early 2017. I decided to just put on a little event, hoping that I might find a few new people locally so I could form a club, and then plan to have an actual meeting the following week. So we held a Roy Holden in January 2017, and the following week we held the first club meeting. I think it was about 3 of us, maybe 4 of us turned up to the club. And then for about 2 months, I think, there was probably me and maybe 2 others that had turned up, and some nights I was on my own. Nobody turned up at all. And I thought, no, I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to keep trying, keep advertising, keep talking to people, try and get people to come along. And eventually I started to get 1 or 2 people coming. And then Mick Hammonds, who's one of our, main people at the club, he started coming along, and we just hit it off. We got on really, really well, and that helped us start to develop a bit of a club culture, and people come along and enjoyed the game. And Mick's a great player as well, we just developed a really good, friendly, fair atmosphere. We've got a club that's a very we really try hard to be fair with one another, and open and honest about the way things are going. And we just got more and more popular, and we gradually got more and more people come along until we got sort of 14, 15 people at one point, and that was great. So then Richard Badger came in, and Richard has done the website for us, and he's really good at organising the events. So he was helping me on that front. So the 3 of us really are the crux of the club. I mean, I know I'm kind of the front man, I suppose, if you like, but definitely Richard, and I couldn't do it without Richard and Mick. They've been absolutely superb for the club. And then the next step really was to get some strips, go to events, and then I'd kind of already got some kind of a small relationship with 1 or 2 people at Wolves. So I decided to try and see whether we could maybe get some strips. And we decided that the easiest way to really tackle that, rather than going and say, we want a couple of £100 for this and we want this for that, and we just went in, and I just said, look, we're going to an event. I mean, as it was, we were going to the Europa League, so it was a great chance and opportunity for me. We said, look, we're going to the Europa League. We're playing at these big events all over the country. We'd love to advertise and kind of almost get you to sponsor us. Could you give us some strips? And they were brilliant. I can't fault Wolves at all. They were absolutely fantastic. And they said, yeah, what do you want? And we said, well, can we have 4 home strips, 4 away strips, and that'd be great. Not thinking that we might be lucky and we might get 4 strips, but they gave us the 8 strips that we were after. In fact, they gave us 9 strips because they gave a young a junior strip for my lad as our whatever you call him. Yeah, brilliant, absolutely fantastic from our perspective. They were great. Allowed us to put because there's a lot of with a football club, they're very conscious of anybody printing anything over the top of their shirts. So what we agreed was all we would do was put the name Wolverhampton Table Football Club on the back of the shirt in place of the number. So we limited ourselves to do that, and we also just put the little tiny badge, our crest, on the arm of the shirt. So that was how we did it, and we built up a bit of a relationship. We've done some things with the club. We've actually did an event where they had they call it Wolfie's Den at the Molyneux, which is where the kids all go in 2 hours before kick-off. And we played some Subbuteo with the kids, and that went down really, really well. So hopefully when we get back to playing again, we'll be able to build that relationship back up again and get some new strips for the new season.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant story to share to finish off with. I mean, Chris, was there anything you'd like to say before we end?
He's remembered.
Yes. So yeah, just to reiterate the work that's just been put in, really. I've been along to the club on a couple of occasions, and I understand how difficult it can be to get these things going. So massive appreciation for what you do at the club. But from a personal point of view, turning up on the very few occasions that I have to watch how you've all developed as players, as you say yourself, you pitch yourself against someone who's at a higher level than you, and you aim to close that gap over a period of time. And I think there's yourself, Mick Hammonds, Richard Badger, who are definitely improved massively from my point of view when I've played you over the few years that I have been coming along. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Chris. Horst, any final words from yourself?
Some last words for this evening. Well, the most important for us as a community, we have to really push ourselves on one string. We just have to hold together. We don't need any fights in our community. It doesn't matter if it's about rules, organization, administration. We need FISTF, and FISTF is doing a good job. And I've been, as General Secretary, I've been working 3 years hard to get the federation running very well. And I'm asking every player in the world, from Australia to Canada, from Argentina to Norway, everybody, we've got one sport, and we've only got a chance to become a recognized sport in the world if we really do a good job. Forget the negative stuff, forget the personal bad habits of the one or the other person. We have to be ruthless in getting sponsors. We have to be ruthless in getting cooperations with national institutions, sports organizations in Germany, in Austria, in Spain, in Portugal, in Iceland, in the Faroe Islands. It doesn't matter. We want to enjoy the game, to have people from Russia, from China, from everywhere, from Africa. Yeah, we need Africa, Morocco, Egypt. Everywhere they are playing football. But we have to get also our sport out there. We need every little manufacturer. We need to do something in one box. We don't need to split up. We don't need that. Yeah, we only have now the last chance. We are declining in members, but we have to have at least, 50,000 members worldwide. Yeah, 50,000. It's not even big. We have 8 billion people in this world, and we cannot manage 50,000 people playing table football. Can you imagine that? I mean, Germany has 80 million people. Italy has 60 million inhabitants or citizens. Yeah, and we have only a few thousand players. Yeah. So we've still got a big job to do in that direction, and we need to do everything possible to make that wonderful sport known in schools. Yeah, in educational institutions, in private libraries, whatever, yeah, wherever you can be a member in a cultural club, yeah. It doesn't matter if they've got different kinds of cultural activities there, but table football can always find a little bit of space. So that's my my message.
No, I completely agree with everything you've said there. I think we've got an opportunity, still got an opportunity to, certainly in the UK, to engage with everyone and put it into one box, like you said. I think for too long we have too many people doing different things, and actually what's happening is we're spreading the audience too thinly, and we need to put the audience together. And that means that we need to get the collectors, we need to get the players, we need everybody to be together and share the stories of everyone. So if we have to talk about a collectors fair, let's talk about the collectors fair. Let's get people interested with the collectors fair. If we need to talk about a tournament, we'll talk about a tournament. But we need to treat them all as equal and not have this sort of players over here and collectors over here and all these other different people scattered everywhere. And I think that's where the problem's been. And there's a massive opportunity to put it all together, put the jigsaw together. We can do that by working together, and doing things such as what Justin's doing as well is a great way of starting that out. But I just want to say, guys, thank you so much for your time tonight. We've run over schedule, but that's because it's been thoroughly enjoyable. Get some great answers to the questions. I'd just like to say thank you to Horst Deimel from Austria. Pleasure speaking to you tonight, Horst. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Justin Scott for the Wolverhampton Table Football Club, because he's doing some tremendous work there. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. And of course, the English legend that is Chris Short. So thank you, Chris, for your great insight into your story of playing the game. But thank you all, guys. And I hope you've enjoyed the show. Hope other people enjoy the show as well. And we look forward to the next episode. And we'll see you soon. Thank you all.
Thank you very much to everybody, and stay healthy and enjoy your next training. Goodbye to everybody in the world, and from South Africa to Chile, and from Hungary to Belgium, and everybody stay healthy and happy. And thank you very much to Justin Scott and Chris Short for this wonderful evening, and also the host of the Big Bang Theory of table football, Justin Finch.
All right, so from Lichfield to Wolverhampton, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Cheers, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.